The House passes a spending bill that includes $5.8 billion for the border wall. Two Chinese nationalists have been indicted for massive hacking campaign. Lastly, a UCLA professor complains firefighters are too white. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. Starting off today, we're going to go over a bill that passed the House last night, which was the spending bill that the Senate had passed 2 days ago. And the difference is that this bill in the House included $5.8 billion for the border wall. There were 217 people who voted in favor and 185 who voted against. The House Freedom Caucus are the ones that proposed the $5.8 billion for Trump's border wall. And after the bill passed, they tweeted out the following: Republicans in Congress have continuously told the American people that we would fight for the wall funding, and today the House of Representatives took its first step fulfilling that promise. The Senate must follow our lead. They said that because the bill has to return to the Senate, being that there has been a change and they have to vote on it again and come to an agreement. With that, President Trump said, or tweeted out earlier today, to Mitch McConnell, telling him to use the nuclear option if need be to pass the bill. If he did that, they would no longer need Democrat support to pass the spending bill, being that only 51 votes would be needed as opposed to the usual 60 votes to pass a spending bill in the Senate. The thing is, Senate Republicans are not in agreement when it comes to using the nuclear deal, such as Senator Lamar Alexander, Senator Jeff Flake, and Senator Orrin Hatch have all said, including Mitch McConnell, that they will not be in favor of a nuclear option, of using the nuclear option. And that's probably the best course of action, especially since Republicans will not be in power forever. So setting this kind of precedent will only cause more issues when Democrats regain the Senate, because it's inevitable, being that we live in a democracy. I do want to add, if you remember, in the Oval Office showdown that took place last week with President Trump, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi, you'll recall Nancy Pelosi saying, or telling Trump, a spending bill with money for a wall would not pass the House. Well, Congresswoman, he kind of just proved you wrong. And to be fair, President Trump did say that if a bill would pass the House but wouldn't pass the Senate, it would be a waste of time to propose it. And it seems very likely that due to the lack of unity on the Republicans' end to use the nuclear option, it won't be passing the Senate, since we need at least 9 votes from Democrats in order to pass it. But Democrats are in complete unison and on being opposed to this wall, which is really, really sad, especially when you look at the billions of dollars we give to other countries that fund terrorism. In other countries, we give billions of dollars to secure their border. But when it comes to our country, they're unwilling to do that, which just goes to show their genuine care for the American people. I mean, a statistic I just learned today was that 30% of federal prison inmates are illegal immigrants. And nearly 1 million of the sex crimes committed in the United States are done by illegal immigrants. None of this matters to the Democrats. Only thing they care about is gaining their support come election time. As long as they get votes, they don't care what happens to American citizens. They can get hurt, killed, robbed, raped. Doesn't matter. Democrats are not the party for the people. They're the party for power and will do whatever it takes to keep it. That's why we see so many newly elected congresspeople that are Democrats in favor of getting rid of our border entirely. It's a scary thing that's happening in our country. No longer is it okay to be proud of being an American and stand up for American values, because those values may offend somebody. Now we have to get rid of our border entirely because it's offensive to keep people out of our country. While we have a political party in our country attempting to destroy it from within, we also are facing some foreign threats as well, and have been for some years. And that foreign threat or threats come from China. So yesterday, on December 20th, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein announced charges at the DOJ along with FBI Director Christopher Wray that 2 Chinese hackers who are associated with the Ministry of State Security in China are being charged with extensive global computer intrusion campaign that took place from 2006 to 2018 in roughly a dozen other countries, including ours. So these 2 Chinese citizens were acting on behalf of China's main intelligence agency. They had planned to steal hundreds of gigabytes of data from military services, government agencies, and private companies in the United States, and like I stated, at least a dozen other countries. So their breaching of computer networks took place in a wide range of industries that included aviation, satellite, maritime tech, industrial factory and automation, automotive supplies, laboratory instruments, banking and finance, telecommunications, consumer electronics, healthcare, mining, oil, and the list goes on and on and on. This is a report that was released from the DOJ. And they also found, the prosecutors found that more than 100,000 U.S. Navy personnel had information stolen, which includes their names, their social security numbers, their date of birth, phone numbers, and emails. One of their methods to gain this unauthorized access to computers and computer networks of managed service providers, or known as MSPs, was explained by the FBI Director Wray when he said the following. One way to think of what is alleged in this indictment is that you've heard about situations where you see someone essentially the equivalent of breaking into a house. This is more like breaking into and getting the keys from a maintenance supervisor who has the keys to hundreds and hundreds and all of apartments and all of the residents in those apartments. That's why this is so significant. This is also why I've been saying for a long time we need to be more concerned with China than Russia. This year alone, how many times have we heard a Chinese hacker being caught? At least 4 times that I can recall from the top of my head. We have the aviation company in Ohio. There was another aviation company that I believe the location was undisclosed. The Marriott, which 500 million customers' information were stolen. And now we have this. Maybe there's some other ones that I'm missing. Regardless, this is outrageous. There's no explanation for it. And this hacking campaign was done in other countries like Brazil, Canada, Finland, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, India, Japan, Sweden, Switzerland. It's insane. There's a cyber war going on, and it's going to lead to the next Cold War. As I've said in prior episodes, Western countries are getting fed up with this type of behavior. And the U.S. is the only country strong enough to stand up against China. Thankfully, we now have a president that's willing to do just that, rather than giving them business and support or whatever they want without doing anything to mitigate or even address these despicable attacks. Rod Rosenstein also adds the following regarding these attacks that further illustrates my point. More than 90% of the department cases alleging economic espionage over the past 7 years involve China. And more than 2/3 of the department cases involving theft to trade secrets are connected to China. I ask again, why are we still concerned with Russia? Why? It makes no sense to me. I'm not saying that they're not a threat. But we have the DOJ saying China is committing most of these attacks that are going to hurt our economy, which will be the downfall of America. I mean, take this for example. They have, as I'm sure you heard, this Made in China 2025. In this includes 10 strategic advanced manufacturing industries they plan to promote, and most of the information that they are stealing are within those sectors they want to promote. Because, as I've said before, China is gearing up for a Cold War. They know the Western countries are going to cut them off. Therefore, they have to do everything they can to gather as much information as possible to prepare when they are cut off from the rest of the world. And the FBI director made a point to say the following to reporters, that no country poses a broader, more severe long-term threat to our nation's economy than China. Come on, people. We need to really pay attention to China. This is where all of our problems are going to stem from. This is where everything needs to be given full attention to. There's no excuse for it. I mean, they're trying to gather as much information as possible on U.S. citizens and customers to benefit them. Also, to influence our culture and rewrite our history. As of right now, there are more Chinese spies in America than Soviet spies during the Cold War. Yet, we're still not talking about it. It's so frustrating. We're worried about Russia collusion. We're worried about Russia interference when the DOJ is saying, we have quotes of them saying that the Chinese government is more of a threat to America than Russia is. Bottom line. Bottom line. That's also why I support President Trump's decision to bring back troops in Syria and withdraw 5,000 troops from Afghanistan. That way we stop funding or having to spend and allocate resources over to those countries in the Middle East. We can then focus on strengthening up our military defenses here at home. Because if you remember, there's been a few episodes where I go over reports and studies that have been conducted showing that our military needs drastic improvement and quickly. China's about to have twice the size of the Navy we do. They are already proven to be more formidable when it comes to their attacks on our computer networks, and it's been shown that our defense military systems have major cybersecurity flaws that need to be addressed. President Trump is doing the right thing. If he's doing what I think he's doing in reallocating resources to those military aspects in which we fail at tremendously right now. And, they're stealing of U.S. citizens' information and gathering information on private businesses, infiltrating colleges, and indoctrinating people to believe communism isn't bad and completely whitewash China's history, might have something to do with the ever-growing love and affection for socialism and Marxism that we have among young people today. It's being taught all over colleges. So, a UCLA professor is starting to bring the Marxist doctrine to the fire departments. This is the last article I want to talk about today, and this is the most, I wouldn't say the most egregious, but it's definitely the most ridiculous thing I've talked about for quite some time. So this professor from UCLA wrote an article for the Harvard Business Review, and it's titled, "Making U.S. Fire Departments More Diverse and Inclusive." She addressed an issue in this article that we've all been thinking about, but are just too afraid to say anything. That is, there are too many firefighters that are white men. She provides statistics to illustrate her point, like that 96% of U.S. career firefighters are men. I wonder why that is. Maybe because only 4% of women want or are capable of being firefighters? Some might even say that being a firefighter is pretty physically demanding. You know, you might have to carry a grown man, a grown woman, children, maybe multiple people at a time out of a building. Typically speaking, women aren't capable of doing that, nor do most women want to do that, which probably explains why only 4% of firefighters are women. Just pointing out the obvious. It might also explain why more women are in the health fields and social services than men are, because, I don't know, just statistically speaking here, more women are nurturing and caring and have those traits in general than men do. Just, pointing out the obvious. But just because 96% of the firefighters were men was an issue, it wasn't her only issue with it. She pointed out the fact that 82% of firefighters are white. And I ask, why do we care? Well, the professor states it has to do with the inappropriate emphasis on physical strength, which upholds white men's dominance in the fire service. She goes on to criticize stereotypical masculine traits like bronze and courage, states they aren't enough. And this is what happens when you let intellectual leftists run or influence your society. They are literally working to emasculate men and that will result in a catastrophic failure here in our country. It will be a catastrophe. There's no two ways about it. We don't need sensitive men running into buildings engulfed in flames. We don't need sensitive men protecting our country. We need men that have bronze and courage. It's no secret that these two traits that are masculine make men take more risk than women, which also explains why men are in fields that are more dangerous than what women are in. That's not a knock at women. It just means men and women are completely different. If we take a look at the Scandinavian countries, you'll find that they have tried to equalize the opportunity for men and women in all sectors. And what you see is something nobody thought would happen. All the social scientists thought if they did what the Scandinavian countries did, which was try to create an equal opportunity for all genders in all fields and cut down any barriers there may be, you would see an equal amount of men and women in every field. It didn't happen. You actually saw the differences in men and women explode. There is an unbelievable amount of women over men in the healthcare fields, and there's an unbelievable amount of men over women in engineering fields. Why? Typically speaking, women care about people more than men do, and men care about things more than women do. And the things men care about more, are attracted to more, are typically speaking more scalable, which leads to higher incomes. So this is disgusting, and beware of this whole equity doctrine that the left has been pushing out. That really just means equal opportunity. Equality of outcome. The equity doctrine literally means they want equality of outcome. You know why? Because freedom, when you have the choice to do what you want, well, that's going to produce inequalities. And we don't want that in America because it's going to offend somebody. It's not inclusive. So in order to be inclusive, we want to eliminate all individuality and start choosing what fields you're going to go into. With that, we'll be able to entirely eradicate inequalities within America. That's where we're going. They're going to start assigning jobs. They're going to start telling you what you can and can't do. You know, kind of like the communist China. Maybe their influence is playing more of a role than we really know. Well, that's the news for today. And I hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you all have a wonderful Friday. And we will see you again on Christmas Eve. So, hope you all have a beautiful weekend. Great time. And enjoy the holidays, man. Merry Christmas. Peace.